Hi everyone, I'm here with Stefan van Calker. He works for Tink, who are in the open banking space, and you're in the business manager looking after payments, and I think you still have responsibility for the UK market as well.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, great to see you again, Chris. I'm Stefan. I'm a business development manager in the payments team at Tink Indeed, mostly looking after the UK market, naturally a couple of European markets as well, right? Yeah, looking with partnering with companies in the telco space, utility space, PSPs, and so on and so forth.
So what's new in open banking? I know we chatted before, and there's been a lot of excitement around getting the additional information, open banking payments, recurring payments, as all the things. All of these things have been swirling around. Where have things developed over the last, couple of years since we last chatted?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good question. I think everyone is still like talking a lot about the potential of open banking,
Mm,
particularly in the payment space, right? Where are we today? What's going to come? I think there's been not just that thing, but like many open banking platforms, and only not in the UK, but also across Europe, things have been boiling, of course. And what we have recognized, I would say, in the past 6 to 12 months, is that we actually getting quite successful in when it comes to partnerships. So let's say if a merchant or an e-commerce or like an e-store wants to go live with open banking payments for the
mm,
benefits that we are all aware of, they actually might actually go through like an iGen or Stripe or maybe a local PSP and use things open banking or like pay by bank methods that way. We of course like there are like a couple of use cases where it also makes lots of sense to partner direct, let's say in the bill payment space or with top
mm.
ups, account top ups, for instance, or maybe in the remittance space, lots of things moving there as well.
Mm.
But I think that's what we see, and I think especially together with PSPs, we see that yeah, the open banking payment method is really getting adopted right now, and that's really exciting to see.
Yeah, payments just seem to have really taken off. Even since we last chatted, just it's coming through much more. And I suppose there's a cost competitiveness around that in terms of like versus card payments and those. So from a merchant point of view or from a vendor point of view, then that is that where the main competitors coming up was why it's being adopted so widely.
Yeah, I think it's a lot about customer choice as well and having an inclusive
Mm,
payment method, right? Because maybe not everyone has their like card ready, not everyone's maybe has a credit card as well or something like that. And paper bank is like a very much an inclusive payment method here as
mm,
well, I would say. So where it's I would say sure it does compete with other payment methods as well. I think on the other end as well, for some use cases, open banking payments just make the most sense. I think especially of the high value purchases, right?
mm,
Someone wants to maybe let's say buy a kitchen or buy a car or anything like that, or like a piece of furniture. That's where it makes lots of sense. And think of the power of not just payments, but I think there's like a lot of potential in also in combining data products. So
mm,
let's say if you want to buy a kitchen, can you actually afford this kitchen?
mm.
Especially now in the cost of living crisis, where lots of people are actually struggling to pay their bills. How easy is it to do like a one-off affordability check to see if someone what someone's income streams are, expense streams are, and then understand, okay, can someone afford this kitchen? And if not, should we maybe set up a payments plan?
Yeah.
So that's like lots of things. Now I'm already deviating from payments a little bit, but there's lots of things in the space that are interesting there, I think.
So that's interesting. So it's rather than being just the payment and I suppose the cost of the payment, it's also the fact that you can get a much richer data stream associated with that payment. And then I suppose, of course, the other thing that we chatted about before is the fact it's often embedded within a process. You can actually do things like reconciliation is easier. So there's like some like back office benefits, but it's also that the extra data that you're actually going to get as a result of the payments through open banking.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and within open banking, there's it's basically built on two concepts like payments
Mm,
initiation service and account information services. And I think within the account information services, Tink has we've built lots of tools, mechanisms, data enrichment on top of that, basically. Because if you would like as a merchant get access to the whole pool of raw data, you would think, okay, how can I actually make sense of the data? Can I make it consumable? And I think by packaging the product in such a way that you can detect income streams. Okay, is this like a frequent stream that comes back? Does someone receive
mm,
salary every month, every week, something like that? Or is it like a regular expense stream coming out? And based on that, what's maybe the best day to charge a direct debit, for instance, or the best date to collect a payment? And that's a very interesting way of, and again, especially in the light of the cost of living crisis, it's just so important to pay a bill when someone actually can afford it
mm,
instead of charging it when that person maybe paid 3 other bills yesterday already as well.
mm.
That way, it's very much a tool that can be used to help people distress also a little bit.
And in terms of adoption and trust, it feels like trust has increased, but then have you also seen increased adoption from almost like the company side as a result of cost of living? Is that driven additional interest, are you finding in the whole open banking product because of the data stuff, which is exactly what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like there's a couple of like companies and industries that we have like more traction than it was before. I think originally open banking, and it's all in the word, right? It's very much like utilized by financial services. I think over the past 12 months, we have like more partnerships, but also more like conversations with companies in the telco space or the utility space, but also water suppliers, for instance. Because talking about the topic of trust, actually, I attended a utility customer summit in Birmingham a couple of weeks ago. And a lot was being spoken around consumer trust, actually, that trust in utility firms is actually decreasing nowadays. And it's simply because they need like more help with the bills, and it takes customer support centers to actually, it takes more time to help customers with their bills. So what can you actually do to help restore that trust? And one of the research that we've done recently is that it's around like the whole cost of living crisis. Now open banking can enhance the experiences. And we found that about half of the surveyed customers, about 51% of the customers, want more control over how and when they actually pay their bills, or especially their utility bills here. And 70% of customers would actually consider switching providers if they're able to change the date of their bill payments, right? Because direct debit is very rigid. It's one day per month. That's when we charge direct debit. But imagine that you can actually do like a check someone's bank account balance prior to collecting the bill. That would distress the customer so much, because maybe it's just like that couple of days difference when someone gets a salary in and someone might be able to pay the bill. That really makes a difference for someone to actually make sure that they can also do their groceries by the end of the week. So there's a lot of like power insights. Of course, payments great, lots of tractions happening there and continue to do so. But in the data products, combining both of them, there's a lot of power in there to, I'm not saying to relieve people from the entire burden in the cost of living crisis, because there's so much to it, but it definitely helps to make life easier of end customers, but also businesses in the end.
I suppose it's the fine tuning around payments and when they go through, and just sort of that customer kind of interaction a little bit. In some of the, you mentioned before a little bit about fraud. I think we're going to check just like into like how it can be used to like prevent fraud. Fraud's been pretty much high on the agenda recently. To a certain extent, I suppose that's a consequence of cost of living, isn't it, as well? Which is you can like people coming open to it, people going more online, and those kind of things. Just do you think there's an opportunity to that? I mean, you're getting approached around like how it can be used to protect customers from fraud as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting point. What we see, for instance, is that you can, let's say, when you are a remittance platform or maybe crypto platform in that space, and you collect payments, but then you also want to make payouts in order to actually comply with regulations, or to make sure that you're actually paying out that funds to the right person. You can, with an account verification, you can basically, programmatically validate account ownership, right? So we return data such as account holder, account number, and the sort code. And you know exactly that person is the person who actually owns the account, because they've done the strong customer authentication with the mobile banking app as well. And there's no chance for fraud, pretty much. That's pretty much eliminated. So I think from the fraud perspective, yes, definitely, there's like lots of things that can be prevented there. When you look at the payment side of things, a similar case, right? Because every single payment initiation is authenticated through the mobile banking app, as opposed to filling out card details, for instance, where that is like more prone to fraud, basically. So there's like definitely fraudulent payments that can be prevented there as well. And I would say thirdly as well, like another use case that we see basically is when, let's say that someone applies for a mortgage, and the bank is asking to do an income verification, for instance. Can actually someone afford to pay this mortgage? What we see that some banks and lenders, they're actually still asking for like screenshots of their bank account, or they ask someone to fill out the details manually. How easy is it to actually forge a screenshot, or to just fill out details, not knowing whether they're right or not? By doing a simple one-off income verification, you know exactly whether the details are right or wrong. Not only to actually, how to say, get people to take out the mortgage that maybe are not able to afford it, but also for false negatives, right? So imagine that someone does not have a complete view of all the income
Mm.
streams coming in and maybe is forgetting something and gets rejected for the wrong reasons.
Mm.
Open banking, yeah, it's a lot of it's a long answer to a short
Yeah.
question, but there's a lot of potential there to
Yeah, I suppose that sounds like it's fraud from protecting in terms of payments coming in because the funds are going to be cleared and all of those kind of things. But then it's also protection for the consumer as well, because particularly if you're making a large payment, it's going to where it needs to be because it's got extra security around it, which is interesting. And in terms of like development, I just ask you, obviously you guys look across the whole of Europe as well. The UK's been quite advanced in terms of open banking, but a couple of conversations recently saying that there's definitely more movement happening in Europe, and we've got open finance sitting in the background, and there's a certain amount of risk around us, like maybe falling a little bit behind because there's the other markets was catching up pretty quick. And I know, like in Scandinavia as an example, it's always pretty advanced anyway. Where are you seeing like new developments or things that particularly the UK industry really needs to think about in terms of extra adoption versus what you see elsewhere?
Yeah, that's a good question, Chris. I think UK is still definitely a leading market in the open banking, no doubt about it, both from a perspective, but also businesses that have actually implemented open banking payments, for instance, but also the quality of the APIs and the data that we get from the
Mm.
banks. But there are definitely markets, I would say, the Benelux, DACH region, Scandinavia, as you mentioned as well, definitely catching up there. I think right now there's lots of talk around like PSD3, open finance, what's happening there,
Mm.
what's next, of course. I think as long as the UK adoption is like growing as it does and really having a more widespread, how to say, adoption of like open banking payments, I think I'm not saying there's like a silver bullet or anything like that there because there's so much. It's maybe it's also too early to say where can the UK particularly jump out compared to the rest of the market because it already
Mm.
does. It has been
Yeah.
already been like a little bit ahead, I would say. So I think like we should just continue as we're doing. I think commercial variable recurring payments, that is definitely something. If UK wants to stick out somewhere, then that's definitely it. We're speaking a lot about potential. Lots of panels are about that, but we're still waiting for more banks to get on board.
Yeah, and I suppose it's just if you've got PSD3 coming up, and obviously the European legislation is moving ahead, it's just making sure obviously that the UK legislation stays at the same pace all the way through. It
Yeah.
doesn't fall behind. It's probably the nervousness to a certain extent, but it needs to be top of mind for us here is making sure that we're looking out and seeing what else is being done elsewhere. How can we stay as competitive as need be, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like in the future, what you can think of, for instance, doesn't need to be like in PSD3 or whatsoever, but that you get like access to even more data pools, right? Right now we get access to data that was before it was isolated in someone's bank accounts. Now
Mm.
through Tink, any other party can access it. But think of data pools that you, for instance, have like loyalty points at a
Mm.
supermarket or at a Starbucks
Yeah.
or at your fuel station whatsoever, right? What's the value? There's like lots of value in that. If you could get access to that data as well and aggregate it with financial data, think of what you can do there. So that could be very interesting as well, I think.
It's quite interesting because like open banking has provided, a framework in what's a very sensitive area, people's bank accounts, and it provides a
Mm.
framework to actually exchange some of that data, and there's huge amounts of value in it. But to do that to other areas, maybe even that are maybe a little bit less critical, like loyalty points as an example, how do you compare that versus your bank account? It's similar, if not the same, it's certainly similar. But it's a framework to get you access to that extra data, to be able to share it, and then do things with that can benefit the consumer. It's quite interesting.
Absolutely, I agree, and I think like this privacy topic is always a sensitive one, right? And I think like in
Mm.
open banking in general, and that will also be when you get access to other types of data pools, you always need to like educate the customer for what's about to happen. Of course, the work that we do on our end, connecting to the bank's APIs, having a smooth authentication journey is very important. But
Mm.
we see more and more, especially in markets with consumers that are more like I'd say privacy sensitive, I would say
Mm.
it's just very important to have a UX design that is basically educating the customer for what's to come. Your bank account is getting connected. How does the journey actually going to look like? And this is why this journey is safe
Mm.
and why your data is in good hands.
And over here, there's been a lot of excitement, I suppose, around variable recurring payments, just trying to get that on board. It feels like that's stalled a little bit recently. But what's a brief comment really around like where are we with that, do you think, particularly in this market?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think in order to answer the question, I think it's good for everyone to understand there's like sweeping variable recurring payments, account to account payments, right, between your own accounts, and commercial variable recurring payments. The former is like available through CMA9, but the latter, commercial variable recurring payments, is what everyone is very excited about, of course. And I think definitely publicly that has been a little more silent perhaps when it comes to like concrete actions that are being taken and more banks live, because that's what many people are waiting for.
Mm.
Behind the scenes, I can definitely confirm there's still a lot happening, that we are still talking with pretty much every bank out there, I would say, to get more banks on board. But it's admittedly, it takes more time than we expected. On the other hand, we also want to use the time to make sure that there are proper agreements in place that is sustainable for the future as well, of course. Yeah, I would say sit tight. It's definitely going to come. And I think we are like in a great position as part of the Visa group as well, because Visa has, of course, like relationship with every single bank out there. So that puts us in a good spot. However, yeah, we're still waiting for the potential
Yeah.
to be flourishing. Yeah.
So despite the excitement, still hold on to the excitement, but it's going to be a little bit while yet. So be a little bit patient, but it's on its way. It's
It's
what
on
I'm
its
hearing.
way. Absolutely. Yes.
No, very, very good. So if we look out over the next sort of like 12, 18 months, what are the big topics that you got on your roadmap or that you're thinking about that we've really got to be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think apart from like commercial variable recurring payments, it's very much in the topics of, okay, how can we still work on an even further development of open banking payments, and how this can be rolled out either directly with an open banking platform such as Tink, or through partners such as PSPs, gateways, orchestration platforms, and so on, to really drive open banking adoption, not just in the UK, but also across Europe and globally ultimately. I think the same thing is, again, what we've spoken about is very much in how can you fully use the power of data products and open banking payments together to help people through like the cost of living crisis, right? It's no secret that I believe it's like over 10 million consumers in the UK right now, they struggle to pay their bills every single month. And I think it's almost not like a cost of living crisis anymore. It's like I don't want to say like a national crisis, but it's something
Yeah.
that where open banking can definitely help to reduce the burden, so to say. If like your insurance company or your water firm, anything like that, would really understand the financial situation that a customer is in, how easy is it then to just move the direct debit date to a different date where where a customer can actually pay their bill, or set up a tailored payment plan in order to meet someone's personal financial situation. I think there's a lot of, I would say, potential in there that can still be unlocked, and that we are hopefully we have a couple of very interesting partnerships in the pipeline that we want to go out with this year, of course. And that is something that we are very excited about, I would say.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, and you can see, despite all the excitement there is about it, that we're really getting into the execution phase, right? So you get into the detail around like actually you actually see it on your bank account, you see it embedded into customer journeys, and so it's like we're in that sort of like delivery phase. It feels like now. So it's still excitement. Still sounds like there's a lot of work going on in the background, huge amount of work. So we just got to watch the space, I think.
Absolutely.
Stefan, thanks very much for joining me. I appreciate that, and it's great to get a bit of an update and catch up a little bit. So thanks very much.
Awesome. Likewise, Chris. Thanks so much.